Slippery Slope, a true crime podcast about Mount Isa and the missing water slide with Dave O'Neill and Brad Oakes.
Hello, it's Dave O'Neill.
And Bradford Oakes.
And it's episode 3 of our podcast, Slippery Slope. Now, let's get everyone up to speed if they've just tuned in. Mount Isa wanted a water slide. They got it made in Turkey. And at the end of the last episode, what happened, Bradford?
Well, the slide didn't turn up.
No.
It's a pretty big thing to go missing, isn't it?
Yes. So it's on a ship. It's on its way through the Suez Canal. And there's some kind of pirate incident.
Just for geography.
Yes.
It's Suez Canal, then it becomes the Red Sea, and then I believe it goes into the Gulf of Oman.
Yeah.
And then into the Indian Ocean.
And on the other side, it's the Mediterranean, isn't it?
And the Mediterranean, exactly.
If you're coming from Turkey, you're coming through the Red Sea, into the Suez Canal, into the Mediterranean. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a shortcut.
It's a shortcut.
So that you have to go all the way around, down past all of Africa. I think it's quite devilish as well to go past.
Yes. Yeah, and South Africa's on the bottom, and then you've got to go up, and it's another week or 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a bit more information from Mark Miller, the project manager.
Turkey's, I suppose that's where the one of the main manufacturers for the water slides are, and cost efficient. Time efficient's questionable, but definitely cost efficient. So originally it was a 16-week procurement lead time, which turned into, I think, just over 24 weeks all up.
What were the delays? There were rumours of pirates.
The pirate rumours are pretty much true. It's so there was a bit of an issue in the Suez Canal where one of the containers got held up, and pirates seemed to take a bit of a liking to the slides, and off it went.
Where did it go?
Maybe the pirates love slides. Maybe they've got their own little water park somewhere. Pirates of the Caribbean, they love it.
So what, did it go missing, or did you find it, or?
No, they went missing. So they then had to remanufacture and resend out more stock, and hence the heavy delay to the project.
The original water slide actually went missing?
Parts of it, yeah, parts.
Was this in the Suez Canal or after the Suez Canal?
I believe it was in the Suez Canal.
Well, that's interesting. He believes it happened in the Suez Canal, but what is the history of the Suez Canal?
I think the French started to build it.
I remember seeing photos of it being dug up by shovels.
In 1798, Napoleon tried to find the remnants of an ancient waterway there, which just started this conversation about the Suez Canal, a bit like the train to Melbourne Airport.
Yeah.
It gets talked about a lot.
Yeah.
People get their photo taken, but nothing much happens.
I remember when it was built because of the Crown. I saw it in the Crown. NASA controlled it.
It opened under French control in 1869.
Right.
I think people kind of squabbled over it for years, but then NASA, the Egyptian president, well, I can read this here, in 1951, Egypt repudiated the 1936 treaty with Great Britain. Britain had to remove their troops. 1956, NASA responded by nationalising the canal on 26 July 1956.
There was a bit of a hoo-ha about that because that's in the Crown. So NASA, president of Egypt, he was the one that controlled it in the end.
It became an enormous source of revenue for them because how much is it to go through?
I think it's 600 grand, isn't it, for a ship?
Yeah.
600 grand.
Yeah, that's there's your city link.
There's your toll.
But importantly, it's US dollars.
Yeah.
It's a great source of US dollars because everybody has to pay in US dollars, which leads me to think that it's gold mine and for Egypt.
Yeah. And it's not that wide. I know it's not that wide.
No.
So it would be easy to attack in it, but it'd be hard to get out. Anyway, we need a bit more information about the actual attack, like what happened. Was anything stolen? Let's go to Daniel from Simplex, who was involved in making the slide and delivering the slide.
Goes into production and it all comes in a 40-foot containers with the steel work and all the bolts, like a package sort of kit, and with drawings that don't make sense, and then you try and put it all together over here.
Now, what happened with the Mount Isa water slide?
It's a little bit hard to get an extension of time when you approach the council and say pirates were involved.
Right. So pirates were involved?
Pirates were involved. I think the pirates actually boarded the ship. I don't know if it was Jack Sparrow or not, but it's unconfirmed.
Yeah. Okay, so pirates were definitely involved. I don't really understand how they got the stuff. Because when we think of containers on a ship, they're closed off. You know, the big classic metal containers that we see on trucks, on trains, etc. But apparently these were something called, I think, open top containers. Well, let Daniel explain.
The steelwork comes with no lids. They're open top containers. All the steelwork, they're loaded in from the top. When it turns up to site, you unload it with a crane or a fronter and rip it out from the top. But all the fiberglass is in what we call high cubes, which are a little bit higher than normal containers, and they pack all the fiberglass pieces in sections like that. And it's actually quite a skillful process to pack a 40-foot container tightly with fiberglass. So if customs end up getting it and rip it all out, they can never get it back in, which is normally one of our issues we can have.
Right, so now I understand that the containers are open. You can actually get in there and have a look and get stuff out. Interesting that both the guys have mentioned Jack Sparrow.
Bit of sadness for me. There's so many other pirates.
I know.
You know, why would Jack Sparrow be your default pirate? You've got Captain Kidd, you've got
Blackbeard,
Captain Morgan, you've got
Captain Pugwash.
Captain. I don't know if he's a pirate.
Was he a pirate?
I don't think he was. I think he was.
But Jack Sparrow, everyone mentions Jack Sparrow.
Captain Hook.
Oh, Captain Hook from Peter Pan.
Yeah, just and don't you reckon that story was just made up as they went along? How did he lose his hand? Oh, a crocodile. Oh, come on, mate.
Yes.
Yes. Get off the bong.
Well, because we all think of pirates as something cute. A parrot on their shoulder, a wooden leg. But, of course, these are like Somali pirates.
I have a pirate joke.
Yeah, go on.
Well, everybody knows the joke. What's the pirate's favourite letter? R. Well, no, in fact, it's the C's.
Ah.
All right. I know.
But have you seen that Tom Hanks movie, Mr. Roberts, where it's like he's on a big cargo ship and Somali pirates board and capture the vessel. So it's those kind of pirates, I believe. It's not the cute pirates.
Not the cute pirates, and it's not the people who back in the 90s were just copying videos. Yeah, because they were pirates.
Oh, yes, video pirates.
The number one concern for the FBI at one stage.
Yeah, video piracy.
Yeah, it's a crime.
Well, you know, Fast and Furious was about copying DVDs. The first movie was about DVD theft.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I've never seen any of them.
Are there any other mentions of Jack Sparrow from anyone on this podcast? Let's go to Coggo, the deputy mayor of Mount Isa.
Yeah, someone probably over in Somalia has got half a slide, so I don't know what they're doing with it. And when they said pirates, I'm like, oh, Jack Sparrow. So Jack Sparrow's the only pirate I'd like to meet.
There we go, another Jack Sparrow mention. You got to imagine though. So the pirates they're aboard of the ship. They've got part of the water slide, or something's happening. But what's happening in Mount Isa? I mean, that's a long way from the Suez Canal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a long way from any water, really, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. Here's Danielle, the former mayor.
So when they said to me that the ship had been taken over by pirates, and to me it was like the dogs ate my homework. You know, they haven't ordered it. They're delaying it on purpose, and they're just trying to get it in after the election. So it's not something I could point to and say, see, look what I've done, you know. Yeah,
Danielle, the former mayor. Well, I suppose with local politics, people could be thinking this is just something's made up.
It
like
is.
Pirates in the Suez Canal, you're like, what?
It sounds like something Bjelke Peterson would have said in the
Yes.
70s or 80s. You know, well, you know, it's
Pirates.
Pirates.
The Suez Canal.
Bloody Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, or Bob Catter would say something like that. Let's cross to Shae Donovan. She actually runs the aquatic centre, the pool in Mount Isa, where the water slide is meant to be. So she's waiting for the water slide. This is what she had to say when she heard about the pirates.
I wasn't too sure what was going on because Mark, the project manager, is a bit of a joker, and if there's something delayed in a contractor might be a day late delivering something, he'll make a bit of a joke about it. So I didn't really believe what he was telling us. I thought it was just some gimmick, he was coming up with something. But then when we found out for real it was a pirate attack on the ship that was carrying the containers, yeah, it was a little bit like, oh, okay, of course this has happened to us in Mount Isa. What else would happen?
Shae, who runs the pool in Mount Isa, hats off to her, she didn't mention Jack Sparrow. When talking about pirates, she's been the first not to mention Jack Sparrow. So, okay, there seems to be disagreement about where the attack actually happened. Let's go to Mark Miller, the project manager.
I believe it was in the Suez Canal. And then the rest of it got diverted, so then the diversion had to have to go around the coast of Africa then. But the pirates attacked in the Suez Canal.
Then, of course, that takes a lot longer to go around the bottom of Africa.
Of course. Hence the 24-week delay.
No, it wasn't in the canal. Yeah, it was in the ocean bits around there. Have you ever seen that Tom Hanks movie where he's at the end, he's going like, "Oh yeah, I'm okay, yeah." Pretty sure it was those type of guys. No, I don't really know. We've had a bit of pirate activity, but none that have ever boarded the actual ship. Last year especially, there was constant pirate delays. Yeah, and like I said, that's hard to get it over the line with the client. Pirates again, sorry, your water slide's not going to be installed in time, but...
Right, so this seems to be a bit of disagreement. That's Daniel there from Swimplex about where the attack actually happened. What's your thinking, Bradford? You've become an expert on Suez Canal via the internet and piracy.
Well, also I tracked down a piracy expert, Dave.
This is what we need. We need a piracy expert.
Yeah, but I was dubious in the first place that anything would take part in the Suez Canal just because of how much the Egyptian government would guard it, and it's so narrow.
Policed, narrow, yeah.
And as we'll discover, there's also a definition of piracy that's going to come into play.
Oh, really? And there's the Houthi rebels?
Yeah, well, there's Houthi rebels, and then, so when people would say Somali pirates, I looked on the map, and Somalia was like about, 2,500 kilometres from the Suez Canal.
Yes.
So that's a long way to go to work.
I mean, if you were a pirate, it's like sort of being in the nightclub or being outside. There's people lining up for the Suez Canal, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's like lining up for a nightclub. You wouldn't go into the nightclub. You'd go, I don't want to talk about attacking people,
no.
But if you were going to do something, surely you'd do it outside.
Yeah.
Surely you'd do it in the bit before the Suez Canal.
Well, it depends. If they're going, the way they're coming from Turkey, so they're coming down, right?
Yeah, right.
So they're coming down, I think you turn left at Israel or something like that. And then you come to the Suez Canal and get in the canal, then you go into, I think, the Red Sea. And then, like I said, I think it's the Gulf.
I'm learning that I don't know anything about geography in that area.
Well, because what you've got, coming from Turkey, that's the end of Europe.
Yes.
To me, it was dubious, although we should cut to the expert and find out a bit about piracy.
Tamsin Page is... We'll let her introduce herself, but she's an academic with many qualifications in this area.
Yeah.
Hello, Tamsin Page here. So I'm Dr. Tamsin Philippa Page. I am an associate professor at Deakin Law School. I did my MPhil at ANU studying the application of piracy law in Somali counter-piracy operations, and I did that while also working with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime about Somali piracy. Would have been in 2012 and 2013. I've also got a PhD in international security law, and I teach and research in international law and legal ethics.
That's impressive. Is there piracy in the Suez Canal?
The question then becomes if it's piracy or something else, because legally it actually wouldn't be piracy at a pure legal level, which is really quite interesting in that regard because of some quirks of jurisdiction.
Yeah, right. What, because of the Suez Canal?
Yeah, because the Suez Canal forms essentially a strait for international navigation. Piracy, by legal definition, can only occur in international waters or the high seas, as we legally refer to it.
Wow.
Right, and so, but are there Somali pirates active in the Suez Canal?
Not in the Suez. They're active mostly through the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa. So down kind of at the point where you have the Red Sea going out into the Indian Ocean through the Gulf of Aden and all of those areas kind of with Somalia and Yemen on either side of that exit from the Red Sea.
So if they're avowed pirates or declared pirates, but then they actually commit a crime in what is in international waters, what do you designate them as?
Suez Canal, my understanding, is Egyptian territory. So essentially, they are just engaging in theft or larceny or whatever under Egyptian law because they're committing it in Egyptian internal waters.
It seemed unlikely because the Egyptians seem to police it so well. There wouldn't be a lot of crime going on there, of that overt nature.
Well, I wouldn't expect so, but it is a major waterway, as we all found out when the Ever Given ran aground and all global trade stopped for a few weeks while they dug it out. The designation of pirate versus just theft is literally one of, did it happen more than 12 nautical miles from the coast of a state? If yes, it's piracy. If no, it's just armed robbery at sea.
Right.
International Maritime Organization, when keeping statistics on this, treat them as the one set of crime, but legally you're only a pirate if you're doing this on the high seas, and there's a whole bunch of really interesting international political reasons for that. But generally speaking, yeah, if it's not happening on the high seas, you're not doing piracy, you're just engaging in theft.
So it's a bit of a champagne versus sparkling wine thing, isn't it?
It is, but the reasons for it are less because the French are snotty and weird, and more because countries like Philippines and Indonesia and things like that have vast amounts of what we call archipelagic waters where they have exclusive jurisdiction, and they don't want Chinese and US militaries just sending their navy patrolling through all of these waters under the guise of counter-piracy operations.
Wow.
And also in the Suez Canal recently, they're not called pirates, they're called rebels, the Houthi rebels, which they seem to have a different aim than, say, the normal standard Somali pirate. Is that correct?
I mean, I'm reluctant to call them rebels because actually they control 75% of the populations in Yemen. So calling them rebels seems to be a denial of the fact that they are just the government of Yemen functionally these days.
Yeah.
They're engaging in attacks on merchant shipping, they claim, out of solidarity and part of it actions against Israel's activities in Gaza. However, they're attacking merchant shipping, which is just either a war crime or a crime against humanity. It's unlawful regardless of the reasons for doing it. But again, the question about whether or not that's piracy comes down to whether or not you accept that the Houthis are just the government of Yemen, or if they are an independent, belligerent organization that doesn't have governmental powers.
And they're not stealing stuff, are they? They just seem to get on boats and hold hostages and stuff.
They're not really stealing stuff. It doesn't mean Somali pirates didn't really steal much either. Somali pirates were generally taking ships hostage and holding them for ransom and then releasing them with all the cargo and crew after ransoms had been paid. But the Houthi are often doing a lot of attacks with drones and things like that and sinking merchant shipping as well as hostage taking, etc. Their goal is not economic, whereas Somali pirates' goal was purely economic.
So with this case that we're looking into, people are in disagreement about where the actual attack happened, but they do believe that the so-called pirates boarded the ship and stole stuff. But I'm pretty sure now that we talk to you and other accounts that it was in the Red Sea, so they all seem to think it was Somali pirates. Why would they take bits of a water slide? They wouldn't know what that was, surely.
I don't know whether they'd know what it was. I mean, they'd probably be able to tell what a water slide is in Somalia just as well as anywhere else. However, it all comes down to economics. Like, pirates are driven by what can we sell, or in the case of hostage taking, how can we make a profit to make ends meet in an area that has been destroyed by civil war since 1992, but the northern regions are fairly stable with autonomous governments, but those governments aren't recognized internationally, so they have no trade or anything else that sustains an economy. So enter piracy as an economic alternative.
So they do have that range then to travel all the way up into the Red Sea?
There have been attacks from Somali pirates, up to 400 nautical miles off into the Indian Ocean off the coast of Somalia. They have significant range, usually because they usually use ocean-going fishing vessels as motherships to then launch boarding skiffs to board ships. They'll kind of then have ladders with hooks that they'll attach to the side of the cargo vessel and climb up with their assault rifles to take control of a ship. And quite frequently they'll fire rocket-propelled grenades from these boarding skiffs at the cargo vessels in an attempt to get them to surrender before boarding.
Wow. And I read somewhere that they're mainly ex-fishermen. Is that right? Because their fishing was ruined, or is that just like an urban myth?
Originally, there was some veracity to that, because with the entire lack of government in Somalia, what you had is an inability to enforce fishing rights licensing. So a lot of foreign fishing fleets were coming in and effectively poaching Somali in the Somali exclusive economic zone of what would be Somali fish stocks. So you did have that element going on when kind of we started seeing the rise of Somali piracy in 2007. But mostly that's kind of abated as a reason, and it became very swiftly an organized crime organization rather than rogue former fishermen.
Right, excellent.
In terms of heists, if you like, I would consider that the slide's a fairly exotic thing to steal, as opposed to weapons and things for resale. Have you heard of any other kind of exotic heists in that region?
There was one, I can't remember the exact incident, a cargo vessel that was actually transporting a whole bunch of Russian military equipment that was being sold by Russia elsewhere, got hijacked and held hostage for ransom by Somali pirates. And when the ransom finally got negotiated and paid, all of the armaments and military equipment was still on board the ship. They didn't take it because it would have been bad for business. So if they're taking a water slide, it's either because they wanted to install it to use, or they had a market for it.
A market for the water slide.
That's amazing.
Fascinating.
There's no chance of finding these people, but what would happen to them if it was piracy?
When you have people caught for piracy, what you first need to find is there a nation state that's willing to prosecute them for piracy? Because under the Law of the Sea Convention, everyone has jurisdiction over piracy. So anyone can engage in prosecution, which does lead us to the situation where we have some pretty wild situations with piracy prosecutions. A lot of my work was on how do we prosecute pirates, and realistically, 98% of pirates who are captured are released without charge because there's no capacity to actually engage in prosecutions. And most states see no point or purpose in prosecuting the at-sea pirates because they're not the ones in charge. So most states will only prosecute the people in charge, which does lead us to the hilarious situation of the prosecution in Belgium of Afwani Senior. So Afwani Senior was a Somali organized crime group leader, ran a piracy syndicate, and engaged in a number of different hijackings and ransoms and what have you, and hostage takings that so happened to be one of them was a Belgian ship. Eventually he said, no, look, I've given up piracy. Piracy is wrong. I'm now going to reinvest all my profits of piracy in community building within Somalia, etc. And so then the Belgian Ministry of Justice pretended to be a Belgian film industry rep and invited him to Belgium to consult on a documentary about Somali piracy, which he then, for some reason, accepted the invitation and flew to Belgium, where he was promptly arrested for hostage taking of this Belgian ship. What on earth possessed him to think that that was a legitimate invitation? I'll never know. And we've also had similar ones where a pirate negotiator was invited to the US under the guise of attending an education conference and was then arrested for piracy as well. So you see a few weird ones like that come up around piracy prosecutions where they finally get enough evidence to prosecute one of the people in charge and concoct these wild schemes to get them out of Somalia into a jurisdiction where they can arrest them.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Tamsin Page, who's like an expert in this area.
And from Deakin University, but based in Canberra.
Incredible. And community building, that says to me, water slide. So, was it piracy or just common theft, Brad?
I think it's got to be 12 miles out. You know, you can be kind of sailing in and out of international waters and all of a sudden it's just larceny. Now it's piracy, larceny, piracy.
Do they have a compass to work that out? We don't want to be pirates. We'd rather be thieves. And I do question, like she said, that the Somali pirates would know what a water slide is. I don't know if they would.
Yeah.
Do you reckon they'd look at it and go, we could use this for irrigation or something?
Well, I don't know. You can buy a lamp at IKEA and look at it in the box and you think, no way is that a lamp.
Yes.
No way in the world is that a lamp. You wouldn't look at
Yeah.
it. You just, I reckon you'd think it's weapons.
Well, so you'd look at the fiberglass bits and the metal and go, what is this?
Yeah, well, you could, even if you could picture it in your mind, you could launch like a big rock down here.
Turn it into a rock launcher, not a rocket launcher,
Yeah.
a rock launcher. Well, that's the end of the episode. And so basically, we're leaving you with stuff's been stolen. What's going to happen? Is Mount Isa going to get their water slide? You'll find out next episode.
Thank you very much.
The goalpost just kept getting further and further away.
2 big trucks arrived with these containers on the back.
When I got in there, it's pitch black. You can't see anything.
Slippery Slope, a true crime podcast about Mount Isa and the missing water slide. With Dave O'Neill and Brad Oakes.
Slippery Slope is written and hosted by Dave O'Neill and Brad Oakes. Original music created by Itinerant Productions. Check out their website, there's some great stuff there, www.itinerantproduction.com. Editing by Courtney Carthy, published by Nearly Media. Thank you to all the guests involved in the making of Slippery Slope, particularly the people of Mount Isa. For more information, check out the episode notes or at nearly.com.au, and thanks again to the people of Mount Isa.